So I bought it and I put it on, and I'm glad I did, because big inspiration for me in the early days.
James Hetfield built one of the heaviest sounds in music history, but the records that shaped him weren't all metal. They were just great, honest, powerful, and impossible to ignore. These are 7 albums the Metallica frontman calls absolutely untouchable.
I have many different favorites for different moods, but thing that should not be.
7. Second Helping. James Hetfield never hid his love for Lynyrd Skynyrd. He talked about them openly and often, which surprised people who only knew him as the guy who made Master of Puppets. Second Helping was the album that hit him hardest. Released in 1974, it contains Sweet Home Alabama and Free Bird, 2 songs that became permanent fixtures in his life. Free Bird especially meant something personal to him. He told Rolling Stone that it fit his life for the first 20 years on the road. Not really getting attached to things, living for the moment and moving on. That was Hetfield in his 20s, and Skynyrd had written the soundtrack for it without ever knowing him. What he heard in Second Helping was a band that played with complete conviction. Ronnie Van Zant sang like a man who had nothing to prove and everything to say. The 3-guitar attack of Alan Collins, Gary Rossington, and Ed King created something that nobody else could replicate. Layers of sound that felt loose and tight at the same time.
Those are songs that they morph. They constantly morph for me.
Metallica covered Tuesday's Gone on Garage, Inc., which told you everything about how deep the connection ran. Hetfield didn't cover songs out of obligation. He covered them because they lived inside him. Second Helping showed a young kid from California that rock and roll didn't need to be complicated to be devastating. It just needed to be true. Skynyrd were true in a way that very few bands ever managed. Hetfield recognized it immediately and never forgot it. 6. Jailbreak. James Hetfield said it plainly. Thin Lizzy inspired a lot of Metallica's guitar harmonies. Phil Lynott was never afraid to write from the heart, even if it was a little corny. That kind of honesty in songwriting was something Hetfield deeply respected, because it was the thing he chased in his own work throughout his entire career.
Or still do, and I love Discharge a lot. That's kind of really cool thrash music.
Jailbreak came out in 1976, and it hit the young Hetfield like a freight train. The title track, The Boys Are Back in Town, Emerald. Song after song that proved a hard rock band could be melodic and ferocious at the same time, without compromising either quality. Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson's twin guitar harmonies on this record were a direct blueprint for what Metallica would later do with Kirk Hammett. Hetfield studied those arrangements carefully, the way 2 guitars could lock together and create something bigger than either one could produce alone. Phil Lynott was also a singular frontman, a black Irishman who wrote about streets and warriors and broken hearts with equal authority. His bass playing drove the rhythm section in a way that made the whole band feel urgent and alive. Hetfield saw in Lynott a songwriter who committed fully to every line he wrote. No hedging, no irony, just the pure thing delivered straight. Jailbreak was the record that captured Thin Lizzy at their absolute peak. Everything working perfectly at the same time. For a teenager learning what great rock music could sound like, it was an education that never left him. 5. Ace of Spades. James Hetfield put Motorhead in the same breath as Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath when he talked about his favorite bands. Lemmy Kilmister was someone he genuinely revered, and when Lemmy died in 2015, Metallica wrote Murder One in his honor. That told you exactly where Motorhead stood in Hetfield's world. Ace of Spades came out in 1980, and it was everything. 32 minutes of the most concentrated rock and roll energy ever committed to tape. Lemmy's bass sounded like a wall of amplifiers falling on top of you, and the title track opened the album like a declaration of war against everything polite and comfortable in music. What Hetfield took from Ace of Spades was the concept of pure forward momentum.
Motorhead, kind of thrashy, but rock and roll. But I loved GBH, and
Motorhead never stopped. They never let up. The drums, the bass, and the guitar all pushed in the same direction at the same time with the same intensity, and the result was something that felt genuinely dangerous. Punk rock had that quality too, and Hetfield acknowledged the overlap openly. Motorhead were the bridge between hard rock and thrash metal, and Metallica walked across that bridge in the early 80s and never looked back. Lemmy was also a lyricist who wrote with wit and economy, no wasted words, everything sharp and to the point. Hetfield admired that discipline because he applied the same standard to his own writing. Ace of Spades remains one of the great rock albums, not because it is subtle, but because it is absolutely certain of what it is. Lemmy never asked for permission from anyone. That kind of freedom left a permanent mark on everything Hetfield ever wrote. 4. Pet Sounds. This one surprised people. James Hetfield talking about Pet Sounds was not what most metal fans expected, but Hetfield was never just a metal fan. He grew up in Southern California, and he told interviewers that the Beach Boys spoke to something deeper than music for him. He got on a major Beach Boys kick and came back to Pet Sounds repeatedly throughout his life. He said the song spoke to a higher power. That was not a throwaway comment. That was a man describing what great music actually does when it reaches you at the right moment in the right place. Brian Wilson made Pet Sounds in 1966, and it remains one of the most emotionally complex records ever put together. The production was unlike anything that existed at the time, orchestral and intimate simultaneously, Wilson layering sounds on top of each other until the whole thing felt like it was breathing. God Only Knows Wouldn't It Be Nice, Caroline Numb. Songs about longing and innocence and the particular sadness of knowing that good things end. Hetfield connected with that emotional directness because it was what he always tried to achieve in his own writing, even when the volume was turned all the way up.
To basically get their foot in the door, and so they were created a free concert.
Pet Sounds also proved to him that making something delicate required as much courage as making something brutal. Wilson was vulnerable on every track, and the record was stronger for it. For Hetfield, who spent years wrestling with how to express vulnerability through heavy music, that lesson went very deep. 3. Back in Black. James Hetfield called Malcolm Young one of his rhythm gods. Plain and simple, no qualification needed. Malcolm's right hand was the most important right hand in rock history as far as Hetfield was concerned, and everything Hetfield built his own playing style on came directly from studying what Malcolm did on records like Back in Black. Released in 1980, just weeks after the death of original singer Bon Scott, Back in Black was AC/DC refusing to stop. They hired Brian Johnson, walked into the studio in the Bahamas, and made the best-selling hard rock album of all time. The audacity of that alone was something Hetfield never stopped admiring. The rhythm guitar on Back in Black was a masterclass in controlled power. Malcolm Young played the same chord over and over, and somehow made it feel like the most important thing anyone had ever done. Hetfield understood that philosophy completely because he was a rhythm player himself, someone who believed that the groove was the foundation everything else had to be built on. Hell's Bells, You Shook Me All Night Long, Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. Each song was a lesson in economy, in knowing exactly what to play and exactly what to leave out. Brian Johnson's voice cut through everything like a buzzsaw with perfect pitch. Cliff Williams and Phil Rudd locked the bottom end down so tight that nothing could move it. Back in Black wasn't just an album Hetfield loved. It was a template he returned to every time he picked up a guitar and tried to figure out what he was doing. A CDC proved that simplicity was not a limitation. In the right hands, it was the most powerful weapon in rock and roll. 2. Led Zeppelin 4. James Hetfield declared Stairway to Heaven the best song ever written. He said it in Rolling Stone in 2004, and he meant every word. When he first got a guitar as a teenager, the first thing he tried to figure out was those opening finger-picking notes. He ran around the house telling his family he could play it. They asked where the rest of the song was. That story tells you everything about what Led Zeppelin 4 meant to him. It was the record that made him understand what a guitar could actually do in the hands of someone who had truly mastered it. Jimmy Page was not just a guitar player, he was an architect who designed cathedrals out of sound. Led Zeppelin 4 also contained When the Levee Breaks, Black Dog, and Rock and Roll, 4 of the greatest rock songs ever recorded sitting on the same piece of vinyl. John Bonham's drumming on this album was the standard against which every heavy rock drummer measured themselves, and Hetfield absorbed every detail of how the band locked together as a unit. Robert Plant sang with a freedom and a power that seemed to come from somewhere beyond technique. John Paul Jones held everything together with quiet authority. What Hetfield heard on this record was a band operating at a level that seemed almost impossible to reach. It made him want to spend his life trying anyway. Led Zeppelin 4 sits at number 2 on this list because only one record in Hetfield's world could sit above it. He even played Zeppelin's songs to his kids on the way to school every week, passing the obsession down like something sacred. 1. Black Sabbath. James Hetfield was 9 years old when he first heard the Black Sabbath album. He found it in his brother's record collection and put it on not knowing what was coming. The opening rain, the church bell, the tritone riff descending like something ancient and unstoppable. It scared the hell out of him, and he never recovered from it in the best possible way. He said Black Sabbath were so cool because they were completely anti-hippie. Everything that was gentle and optimistic about late 60s music, Sabbath walked up to it and knocked it flat. When Hetfield and Lars Ulrich inducted them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2006, he said it directly. Without Black Sabbath, there would be no Metallica. Tony Iommi was Hetfield's guitar god above all others. The single-note riffs, the weight, the darkness. Iommi played with a ferocity that felt elemental, like the music was being dug out of the ground rather than written at a desk. Ozzy Osbourne's vocal on the title track was unlike anything that existed before it, genuinely unsettling in a way that pop music had never dared to be. Geezer Butler wrote lyrics about war and death and occult forces with the calm authority of someone reporting facts. Bill Ward drove the whole thing with jazz-inflected heaviness that nobody has fully replicated since. The Black Sabbath album was not just the first heavy metal record, it was the founding document of an entire way of thinking about what music could be. James Hetfield has spent his whole life writing footnotes to it. That 9-year-old boy who put the record on and felt the ground shift beneath him never really grew up. He just got louder. 7 albums, 7 records that built the foundation of one of the greatest bands metal has ever produced. James Hetfield listened carefully and learned everything. The heaviness, the groove, the honesty. He took it all and turned it into something the world had never heard before. That is what the greats do. Subscribe for more stories from the legends who changed music forever.